Webinar on optimizing DegreeWorks and Banner. We're very happy that you were able to join us today, and we'd like to start with just a little bit of housekeeping. We would welcome your questions at any time throughout the presentation, or comments. It doesn't have to be a question. Your feedback will be lovely. You can enter that in the chat window. At the end of our presentation, we certainly will be available to open up to conversation. Well, you can unmute yourself at that point. We can have a conversation if that's relevant for what you want to discuss. You should have entered the room with your microphone muted, and we would ask that you stay in that state until the presentation is over, partly because we are recording and we want to make sure there is no background noise. And yes, we will send you a link to the recording following this webinar, and you'll have that for your reference. You'll also be able to find that information on the Ferrilli website. My name is Carol Thomas. I am Senior Vice President with Ferrilli, and part of my responsibilities with Ferrilli is to manage our Banner and DegreeWorks practices. I'm joined today by my colleague, Stephen Terry, who is a director over much of that activity. Just a little bit about our background. We both come with lengthy careers in higher education technology leadership. Both of us have served as CIO at different institutions, both public, private, 2-year and 4-year. And so we come to this understanding a lot of the challenges that present themselves in the day-to-day work that we do, both in IT and in the functional offices. So we hope that's reflected in what we share with you today. In an attempt to get to know you a little better, though not you personally, but your institutions, we're actually curious to find out what version of DegreeWorks you are using. The choices are you're somewhere in the 5s, but not at 5.0.5, or that you're still in a version 4. Some people are, or maybe you don't know, and that would just be helpful for us to know. And thank you for taking the time to respond. It looks like it's a combination of the first answer of 5.0.1 to 5.0.4, which is pretty typical, and don't know. So none of you are at 5.0.5, which is the current release, and happy to see that none of you are at 4, which would be causing some challenges right about now. So happy to have that information, and thank you very much for sharing it. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what we mean by optimization in the context of Banner and DegreeWorks. First, it means staying current. So we're happy to see that many of you, if you knew where you were at with your DegreeWorks installations, that you're at least a 5. Release level. Many of you had to do that as a result of the changes in technology that occurred, but also now we'll talk a little bit about Ellucian's support approach and why that really challenges us to stay current as well. We also mean optimization, as part of optimization, really looking at the health of the overall system, both the health of the DegreeWorks environment, the interface between DegreeWorks and Banner, and the Banner configuration that can contribute to issues with your environment. And we'll get into those details as we move through this. And then optimization also makes sure that you wants to ensure that you have a proper configuration and setup, all with the goal of delivering exceptional service to all the people who use the DegreeWorks tools. So that can include students, faculty, staff, and advisors, and others who may have interest in understanding the student's progress towards their degree, or have other interests as it relates to advising. So our overall objective when we work with our clients on DegreeWorks and Banner optimization is to first make sure that the investment in DegreeWorks and Banner is providing the best possible experience for students, faculty, advisors, and other staff. That this implementation is supporting, not just supporting, but also enhancing student success initiatives, and really that it's doing what we expect it to do as an institution as it relates to our programs, our program management, our student experience. So our process, and what we'll talk about today when we engage in these activities with our clients, is first to understand and ensure technical currency. Second, to perform a health check, and we'll talk about what's involved in that. And then third, to, back to the word optimize, really optimize the environment so that you are getting the most value from the work that you're doing to use DegreeWorks and Banner together. So technical currency, or getting and staying current in your environment. That's the first step in this activity, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Steve Terry, to talk a little bit more about this. So please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Carol. Good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you spending the time with us this afternoon. So pretty straightforward. In the slide, we see that a couple of things you need to do to stay relevant and current is make sure that your operating system is up to date and that your database is up to date. We all know that Oracle and Lucien are de-supporting the Oracle 12. 12.2 goes away soon. 12.1 has already gone away, their support. So getting current is something that we have to do, and it's part of the process that we need to look at on an annual basis at least. The other part, it's pretty straightforward and probably makes sense to most of you, and that is getting current on DegreeWorks 5.0.5. Now, why is that important? If any of you attended eLive about a month ago, we heard on the kind of DegreeWorks presentation that Lucien is finally going to kind of take a stand and really only go back in terms of their patch releases a couple of versions, but what they're going to actively support is what they call the active product. And today that active product is 5.0.5. So keeping relevant, keeping current on the new version of DegreeWorks is important, and something that we're probably going to be required to do moving forward as Lucien is trying to streamline and make sure that they're not supporting 5 or 6 different versions of the product. They're trying to get everyone to move together and be on the same page in terms of the versioning that they support. So that's something to keep aware of. And this is why it matters. Carol will walk us through that.
So it does matter, just as Steve mentioned, it matters because the Lucien support model is driven by being at the current release level, and we certainly want to make sure that we're up to date and providing the best possible service through those enhancements. The second is support from Oracle. And we all, if we've been involved with Banner for a long time, we know we can't decouple our Banner environment from our Oracle environment. We consistently have to be at a supported and certified level of Oracle. And so that 19C upgrade is very important. And I'm sure many of you have already completed that, but that's certainly important. And then, of course, we want the best experience for our student, faculty, and staff. And that really is improved by all of these enhancements that we're talking about. Steve, talk about some of the other considerations.
So when we engage with clients on DegreeWorks health checks, upgrades, just general work, these are kind of the 3 big items that we come across. And I'm going to start at the bottom first. Many institutions we work with have had some sort of loss of DegreeWorks knowledge. DegreeWorks has been around for a while, as you all know, and those who started with DegreeWorks, especially with scribing, have sometimes left the college or university. And so that loss of kind of knowledge, institutional knowledge of DegreeWorks is a real burden for a lot of schools. So one of the things we stress when we come in is to try to reestablish that base, spread it across maybe IT, but across the registrar's office in general, so that you have several folks working on that at the same time. It's a big, huge issue for most schools, that kind of loss. And so trying to find more than one that you can spread that across, especially, with scribing, is become one of the key things that we look at. The other thing are localizations that have happened. Obviously, for those of you who are on later versions of DegreeWorks know that some of those localizations that you might have done in earlier versions can go away. Here's a great example of what I'm talking about. Sometime in the past, we've had schools where the provost or the president has said, hey, in the degree audit, I want to make sure that the advisor's email is in there. And so someone has had to customize or make local modifications to DegreeWorks so that appears in the student's audit. Well, now with these modern versions of DegreeWorks, especially 5.04 and 05, there's a button in the top right-hand part of the screen that has all of the advisor's information, and you can, kind of without reprogramming and without customizations, put that content in there to make it fully accessible to the student and more engaging. And it's something that the responsive dashboard kind of lends itself to when students are in that. The other piece that we probably need to talk about is that as these products have matured, there is less need for technical support. Now, let's be honest, scribing is still very highly technical and requires almost a programmer type attitude to be able to approach and do some of this work when we're scribing catalogs. But the technical knowledge that we once had to have in earlier versions of DegreeWorks really has gone away, and we can use the interface or the controls within the apps to be able to set those parameters and do the things that we want to do within the product. And so those are three things that we try to concentrate and point out to clients when we work with them.
Thanks, Steve. So we're curious, just from your perspective, the thing we hear a lot about is this lost institutional knowledge. So we're just curious of how many people in the audience have experienced or expect to experience it. I'm not seeing any no's. Oh, there they go. Okay. Yeah, this works out to be about what we see when we're talking with people. Vast majority have lost institutional knowledge about that degree work configuration, and typically it's impacting the utilization of this important tool at the institution. If you're saying not yet, I hope you're preparing for that kind of transition. If you said no, be prepared, because it will likely come, and hopefully you have things documented and otherwise managed if that's in your future. So thank you for sharing that. We appreciate it. So what we've heard from our clients, as we mentioned, we lost our DegreeWorks guru. Our documentation hasn't been maintained. And more often than not, especially in times of transition, which this last year has certainly been a time of transition for many, we know we're missing something, but we're not sure what it is. So I thought I'd ask Steve, who's in the trenches and doing the field work on a lot of this, to talk a little bit about some real client experience.
So we're going to come back to this constant theme throughout the afternoon of technical currency and what that means. And let me give an example. We are currently working with one client who is on a very, very old version of DegreeWorks, as old as you can possibly imagine. Their infrastructure is in a Windows-based environment running Oracle and an old version of Oracle 11G. So you can imagine the heavy lift that it takes to try to get them into the modern 5.05 environment. And there need not be that kind of burdensome lift. We all have to approach it where we keep things relevant, keep them up to date. Sometimes this happens because we've had a loss of staff, we've had a loss of funding, there aren't enough people to keep it current. There's been no commitment to maybe doing some consulting on the side. But if we're going to make this a viable, important product, which it really is, there's nothing more important than degree audits for our students, we need to keep that kind of technical infrastructure kind of viable. Another way that schools kind of run into this problem is, as we mentioned earlier, that loss of knowledge. Typically, we're talking about the scribing of the catalogs. Possibly they lost the person, the guru, as Carol mentioned earlier, that did all of that work for the Reg office and now has moved on. Other times they have hired consultants when they, implemented DegreeWorks, had them do the initial scribing, copied from what that initial consultant did, and have just been trying to piecemeal it and maintain it. So those are the two areas where we see that technical currency has kind of fallen by the wayside and they need help. And it's really, there's a heavy lift if you've gotten way behind, but if you can keep it current and keep it managed, you can approach this in a more meaningful way. And we kind of encourage clients to at least take a once-a-year approach to this as they look at what's ahead and how to maintain the product.
And we'll provide some of those once a year kind of activities as we move through this. So thank you, Steve. And that really does, to some degree, fall under this notion of performing a DegreeWorks health check. So we coined that phrase for ourselves because we found as we were working with schools using Banner and using DegreeWorks that there was a set of things that we really needed to take a look at in order to understand if their environment was configured to support their institutional goals, but as well any extension of Banner, and we'll talk about, or extension of DegreeWorks, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So Steve, back to you.
Yeah, so this the bullet points on this slide maybe need to be shifted or indented below yearly maintenance. What I would say is that all of these bullet points kind of fall underneath what we'll call yearly maintenance. The first one is obviously pretty straightforward. You need to describe the current catalog, and you need to do that every year. Sometimes that means going back and looking at just the previous 2 years and fixing things as programs and colleges and requirements have changed, making sure that you're keeping that relevant for the past and current students and new students. Removing old audits, you can't believe how that can impact the system. Looking at the population settings that you have and selections that you're bringing into DegreeWorks. Just simple review of the database settings. Sometimes that involves your IT department and you looking at that, seeing where things may have run amiss, where we have problems. Just taking a look at the various logs that come out of Oracle for that. Reviewing the transit log files. You can find a great deal of what's going on with your system, and one of the things we do is when we engage with clients is take a look at that, see where they're at, see what it's showing, figure out what's going on. Also checking your security via controller. It's a handy way to see who has access and why they have access, and do they need access, and do they have the right access, especially for your advisors and the folks that are helping students day to day with their degree audit and their courses. And then finally, just a review of the Band 80 population and queries. Can we fix some of those queries that are behind the scenes, or can we eliminate them? Can we make them better so that they're more meaningful and we're populating into the right area of DegreeWorks with that information? And Carol will tell us why we need to do this.
Well, and it's for many of the same reasons. It's for efficiency and processing of this complex system. It's for stability. And I remember you telling me some stories, and I think you're going to expound on this in a minute about the impact of hanging on to too many audits in the system and what that really does to performance. So we really want things to be efficient, to be stable, and to produce, again, the results that we expect, so that students, faculty, staff, advisors, et cetera, have the right kind of experience with this very important and powerful tool. And I would love to hear your stories.
Yeah,
Steve,
we'll say that's a good segue right into it. So we have been doing some work over the past several months with a very large public university. And part of the mission of that public university is to always keep the students, if they've never graduated especially, but always keep them in the family, keep them a part of the system, never letting them expire, so that any point in their life cycle they can come back. They might have started 6 years ago and now they want to finish their degree. So their mission is to always keep those students available and ready and there, within the system. Well, when they've done that, they kept all of the audits in DegreeWorks over all of those years and never expired those audits. When we first were engaged with them, they were having performance issues. When we looked at it, we saw these thousands of old audits. And we all know that there's no real good reason to keep those around for any length of time. And so as simple as that is, just kind of purging the system of all of those old audits, determining what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep, coming up with a regular process of deleting, purging, looking at how audits are created and kept and the meaning behind them. Taking those steps really can accelerate, some of the optimization and performance of DegreeWorks, especially at a large institution where lots of folks are engaged with a product and hitting it, and especially right before registration when they're making decisions. And so having the ability to go through and do those simple sort of cleanups is really paramount into keeping, your system working and humming along.
Thanks. And so the environments, how do we ensure that they are optimized for the goals that we have for how we're going to use that system? And so what are some of the things that we do there? And back to you, Steve.
So these seem pretty straightforward, but believe it or not, this first one is is sometimes not done. And one of the first things that we do when we work with clients is to make sure that their test DegreeWorks environment is attaching to a cloned, up-to-date test banner environment. And that work needs to happen first, especially when you're putting in a dot release of DegreeWorks and you're going to upgrade. You need to have that environment so the folks can learn it, experience it, spend some time with it, do the testing that's required. And you need to have that relationship between the test version of DegreeWorks or the new version of DegreeWorks that you may be rolling out to a banner test database that's up to date and has current data. You cannot believe how many times we walk in and that banner test database is 2 years old. It's never been cloned, and they can't understand why they can't figure out, how to do some things. So that's one of the first steps. If they're a large institution, as I mentioned earlier, we might need to look at doing load balancing, standing up another Tomcat server and putting the app on the front end to maybe help them with that. Fortunately, you've got to be at a pretty large institution to be able to need to do that more often than not. Just looking at the data pools of the DegreeWorks applications, you can spend hours going down that rabbit hole, but taking a look at those and figuring out how they are affecting performance is part of the optimization plan that we come up with. We also encourage, our clients to take a look at e-communities, Lucian's e-communities. You'll be surprised how much good information is out there from your colleagues and peers at other institutions. And so being able to share that information, finding those problems, those unique items that they have that you may have, and being able to share those back and forth is really helpful. And we often ask our clients, have they done that? And sometimes we get, no, I never look at it. So it's a way we encourage folks to kind of keep relevant and keep up to date. It's a community of other peers that are, maybe having some of the same issues with the products. And then one, we often kind of talk about to get the most bang out of the buck. And that is improving or enhancing reporting out of DegreeWorks. Some choose to use Argos. Some choose to go down a path of the materialized views to the ODS and reporting that way out of a product like Cognos. To do these things, to do this improved reporting, remember, we're going to come back to this kind of technical currency, keeping everything up to date and optimized. We've recently had a client that could not do the ODS reporting because their DegreeWorks was at, and Oracle was at such an older version that it wasn't compatible with the new banner and the new ODS. And so there was a conflict and they had to wait till everything was upgraded. So these are things that we run into. And again, comes back to this theme of technical currency and keeping your systems up to date.
And to Steve's point, we do this for system health. We do this, again, to maintain the technical currency. And we really want to use the tools effectively and efficiently. But an additional piece of this, which we know is occurring in the field, are extensions to DegreeWorks and Banner. And one of those extensions is a product that we provide here from Ferrilli. We want to talk a little bit about that as well today. So as is there more you want to say about the client experience?
Yeah, there's probably one other thing that we probably need to talk about that I think is really important and relevant to everyone. And I don't know a good way to describe it, but it is, we'll use a Banner term, kind of the web tailoring of the responsive dashboard. I think that one of the things that we find has the most value is spending time, whether the client is in a test moving to production scenario, or maybe they've been up for a while and it's just not, the interface is not laid out the way they want. So spending time with the header information, making sure that the degree audit looks well, doing that tailoring work within the responsive dashboard is really important and really will make the ability to digest the information, both for students and advisors, more palatable if you have that working. And it's a simple process. It can take, a day or two, could take a few days, but going through and kind of looking at every component and what you're exposing, what you're sharing with the students, is it meaningful, and arranging it in a way that you all can do quite easily within the the configuration settings of the interface. Doing that work really adds value to the overall product. And we stress that just from the onset of the engagements with our clients, to be able to keep that interface looking clean and meaningful for that particular institution.
Thank you. So now I do want to work into the concept of what it means to extend the DegreeWorks and Banner functionality. I want to talk a little bit about the extension into the product that we at Ferrilli call the Ferrilli's Automated Degree and Certificate Evaluator. Shorthand is AutoGrad. We have done several presentations on this, and so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail here other than to introduce conceptually what's here and why the topics that we've talked about up to this point are really prerequisites for thinking whether you work with us or you're working on your own system to develop some of these additional tools that are not part of the current DegreeWorks toolkit. So our Automated Degree and Certificate Evaluator is really designed to support the student success initiatives at institutions in multiple ways. So one of the most common questions that we get when we're talking particularly to community colleges, but community colleges, four-year schools as well, is how can we quickly tell who has completed their declared program? Not one by one, but in batch. Can we select a population of students and determine who has completed their declared program? Can we select a batch of students and tell who's close to completing their program? Can we identify students who've achieved a credential they didn't even know about through an evaluative tool in a batch approach? So really this boils down to being batch what ifs in DegreeWorks terms. But in addition, can we streamline the graduation process on the Banner side by using the tools that are already built in to post those degrees to Banner and indicate that the student has graduated? All of these things are possible through this process that we call the Automated Degree and Certificate Evaluator. It's really designed to really think about degree completion by eliminating institutional barriers, and each school will have its own set of what it thinks the institutional barriers are. At the institution that we're going to show you a little bit more detail on, they simply felt that their whole graduation application process was a barrier to graduation, and they wanted to eliminate that and use technology to really foster that student success through automation. Automation that was introduced deliberately and thoughtfully through the student life cycle, but really became one of the strategies to launch a degree completion initiative on their campus, and therefore an option for any college or university, really. So just a very high level look at how it works. Oops, sorry. Batch what if audits are run on the DegreeWorks side. These can be parameterized to narrow the population. So really the goal here is to enable users to identify all the credentials for which a set of students are eligible or near eligible for, irrespective of any given student's declared program of study. This identification is made via that batch audit, which in DegreeWorks terms, as I've mentioned here, is a batch what if audit. It enables the users to parameterize this batch audit according to selection criteria associated with a student, a declared program of study, or a what if speculative program of study to narrow the audit population. Now, why would we want to narrow the audit population if we can use automation? And it is simply the notion of resource consumption. To run all programs against all students to determine all possible results is a complex, system-intensive calculation. So when we work with institutions, we work through a series of prioritized batch what if audits that will achieve results more quickly and in a more organized fashion than just doing every program against every student. So if the goal of that what if audit was to determine if a student has earned a degree or certificate, the option also exists then to batch award those earned credentials to those students on the Banner side and complete that processing on the Banner side, which for the institution that we've worked with most closely on the Banner side of this work, that was one of their goals, was to get that institutional barrier of the graduation process out of the way of students succeeding and completing their degree or earning their degree. So the results of this work varies by school because it varies by the goals that they've established for themselves. But the things that we know for sure are that it improves the advising insights. So if an advisor has a group of students and they've run the batch what if, they can see who's within, for example, 6 or 8 or 12 credits of graduation and ensure that those students are on track to graduate en masse. You can do that individually within DegreeWorks, but certainly it can be more efficient to do it in groups. It has resulted in improved completion, and by that I mean degrees and certificates awarded, and it has certainly simplified the graduation process. As with all the sections of this presentation, we've wanted to talk a little bit about client experience, and we typically like to boast about successes. So Allen Hancock has been a very strong advocate for this project, Allen Hancock College, and their president agreed to participate in what is, I'm going to say straight up, a promotional video, but I think the message behind Dr. Walther's comments are really informative to this whole process. So I'm going to run that for you now.
I'm Marcia Daniel, Chief Client Officer at Ferrilli. When Dr. Kevin Walters, president at Allen Hancock College, needed to improve completion and graduation rates, he reached out to Ferrilli. Dr. Walters, please share the results of our AutoGrad project.
Thanks, Marcia. Here at Allen Hancock College, we're committed to the student journey and the successful completion for each one of our students. It's a theme that we have running throughout the campus, our staff, our faculty, and our administration, committed to making sure students complete their program. It's more than just graduation rates, it's graduates. We need more graduates in our community. And we know that when students graduate from Allen Hancock College, they're going to earn on average $9,000 a year more than they earned with just a high school diploma. That's real money in our community. So as we started looking at how we could get more students to graduate, it occurred to us, we have this great technology project called DegreeWorks. The students can get in and they can do some scenario building. And we also have a really robust IT system. We wanted to combine that and be able to tell the students that they already had an award. That's when we got in touch with Ferrilli. Ferrilli helped us program the system so that once a year, with the push of a button, we can tell students, you've completed everything you need to complete to graduate. We can also identify those students that are almost ready to graduate and let them know. It's a tremendous project. The Ferrilli consultants were key in helping us do it. Our staff that worked on this project and our administrators who really put in the groundwork to make sure this was one of the best student success projects we've ever had. And the results speak for themselves. For 8 years ago, we were graduating on average about 740 students a year. Today, we're graduating 1,300 students, more than a third of them through the auto award process. And it's meaningful for our families. Our families are so excited when their students walk across the stage. Thank you to Ferrilli for helping us do this. Thank you to our staff and our team that made it work. And we're so honored that our students are now getting the credentials they earned in the easiest manner possible. So thank you, Marcia.
By forming partnerships like Allen Hancock College and Ferrilli did, everyone wins. Thank you for allowing us to share how one college made a tremendous difference.
So thank you for watching that. I hope if you have questions about what that work looks like, that you will reach out to us. You're welcome at any time to ask us about DegreeWorks Health Check services, our Banner managed services, where we provide the back end management of all of your Banner environment, our DegreeWorks managed services, where we will help you stay technically current, keep you up to date, and perform regular health checks. And then also our automated degree and certificate evaluator. We're really glad that you were able to join us today, and we'd love to open the floor to any conversation. Any questions or any comments that you'd like to make, feel free to use the chat. Or if you're comfortable and want to come off your mic and come off mute and ask us questions, we're happy to take those now. Since I'm not seeing anything popping up right this minute, I'm not trying to rush anybody, but I will move through the last couple of slides to let you know that on our website, in the What's Happening section, you will see recordings of prior webinars. You will see this one posted when it's ready, and that's where you can also stay up to date on what's planned for us in addition to what you receive in our general communications. And if you're interested in finding out any more about what we've discussed today or any other services and solutions that we might be able to help you with, please be sure to be in touch with us at info@ferrilli.com. I will stop sharing my screen and certainly open it up to any comments that you might have.
Anything that's crossed your mind.
Seeing none, we're happy to keep talking, but you probably also want to get back to your to the rest of your work. So we will hang out here for a little while. If something comes up and you want to discuss anything with us, please feel free. With that, we will officially call this webinar complete.
Thank you all.
Thank you.